So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who's Vicky Johnson. It's quite hard to introduce her because we've been so friends and so close for the last couple of years, running a project together called the Museum of Happiness. And it just started with a chance encounter and meeting. And I'm just worried that if I introduce you for too long, I'll end up sharing half the story. But I'm really, really excited to be here. If you get a chance to speak to her, she's a real bubbly, happy, natural personality. And I'm always, whenever I meet people, I'm like, you've got to also meet Vicky. So she also she has worked for the Untitled Challenge. She's worked there for many years, working with a lot of young people, and she's been really motivated to help young people to boost their well-being, and that's how we ended up starting this project, the Museum of Happiness. So friends, please give a warm welcome to Vicky Johnson.
So let's use this.
We mic'd up.
I don't need the clicker.
You need the clicker.
Great. Hi, everybody. What an amazing, inspiring morning. It's only 10:10. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. So I'm Vicky, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Museum of Happiness. And for those of you who don't know, the Museum of Happiness is a place where people of all ages and all backgrounds can come together and explore the science and art of happiness in fun and playful ways. So I guess happiness and mental health has always been something that I've been really interested in, and an area that I've held really close to my heart. And I imagine that stemmed from my mum has battled with mental health challenges for as long as I can remember. And bless her, she's one of the kind of strongest, most inspiring people I've ever met. But yeah, it takes its toll. And growing up, it was just me and my mum, as my dad unfortunately had an alcohol addiction. So it was me and my mum, my nana and granddad. And
Sorry, I don't know why.
No, it's all right. I've got a little picture of us all. And they'll come up in a sec. And, you know, we were a little family, and although we weren't rich in monetary sense, and I loved what Nippon was saying about different forms of capital, and actually, although we weren't rich in a monetary sense, we were very rich in love. And when I was 13, my dad actually passed away, and then my mum became very poorly, and she actually got a slip disc in her back, and she lost her mobility, she lost her job, and it led us to actually losing our house. So actually, with all that, with the kind of the stress and pressure of it all, it led her to trying to take her own life. And with that, I remember just feeling so sad and so guilty that I actually wasn't able to notice those signs or do anything to prevent it from coming to that. But my mum, being the amazing woman she is, she grew in strength and she bounced back and she got the help that she needed. And before long, she was getting me ready to wave off to university. Yeah, should I click it? Let's go. There we go. There we are. So yeah, that's us, the Johnsons. So I went off to university, and at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Take it back. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't really have any passions or interests, which is really weird to think now, because I've got so many. And so I took a bit of a stab in the dark, and I did events management, under a bit of a false illusion that it'd be quite glamorous. When in reality, I actually found it quite meaningless when I was there and I was doing these different events for the university and for corporate organisations. It just didn't really bring any meaning or purpose to my life until I started doing voluntary events for Marie Curie Cancer and the Sue Ryder Care Hospice. And it absolutely transformed everything. All of a sudden, I had this real sense of meaning and purpose, and I absolutely loved it. And it actually stopped me from dropping out the course. Can you hear me better now? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. So yeah, it was the actual volunteering that stopped me from dropping out the course altogether. And I didn't want to, because I thought, I don't want to let everyone down, I don't want to be a failure, but actually this is doing nothing for me and it's bringing absolutely no meaning and purpose to my life, and I don't think I'm very good at it. But volunteering for the Sue Ryder Care and volunteering for Marie Curie Cancer changed everything. And it brought so much reward and so much happiness to my life. And with that, I actually started to prioritise it over everything else, to much despair of my university tutors. And I remember them sitting me down and saying, Vicky, you are going to fail university if you don't start investing more time and energy into your studies and your dissertation. And actually, you're doing all this volunteering, which is wonderful, but actually, people who have spare time volunteer, and you are not one of those people. And I didn't want to. I thought, actually, I was going through quite a stressful time. And I didn't realise at the time that you could be in poor mental health without having a mental health condition. But I'd taken on too much. I was feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. But actually, so was everybody. And it became kind of like the norm at uni, that everyone was kind of cracking under the pressure. And I remember thinking, actually, isn't it kind of a crying shame that there's not more support in place to kind of help people? There's no need for everybody to be kind of so stressed and kind of cracking. And I remember turning around and saying to her, do you know what? I feel like if I stop volunteering, I feel like everything else in my life might fall apart. And actually, it's the one thing that's bringing so much happiness and so much joy into my life. So I stuck with it. And I didn't do that well at uni, but actually, I'd found my passion, and I felt like I'd found a purpose in life. And actually, that meant so much more to me than the degree itself. Cool. So, after university, I went travelling for a little bit, and I rocked up to a guest house called Smiley's Guest House, which I was lured into for obvious reasons. And as wonderful as travelling was, the sightseeing and the beaches and the parties, I was really longing for that sense of meaning and purpose again that I got when I was volunteering. So very keen to get involved in some projects whilst away. I started looking, and before I went away, I remember Wasim, the head fundraiser at the hospice, saying to me, Vicky, please don't spend loads of money that you don't have on a pre-arranged package. You'll absolutely stumble across something when you're away. So I walked into this hostel, and I actually tripped over a laminated poster on the floor, and these guys were there. So 50 smiling orphans with a big sign saying volunteers needed. And I had a little laugh to myself, and I thought I would stumble across a volunteering opportunity, but I didn't think I would quite literally trip over and stumble across something. So very eagerly, I picked up the phone and I booked a trip to go and visit a week after. And I was really nervous, and I didn't know what to expect, 'cause I'd never really done anything like that before. And as soon as I got there, all my fears and all my worries completely dissolved. And I was greeted by these guys. And what I found there actually was, although these people, again, were very, very poor in a monetary sense, and they'd been through really traumatic things, they were orphans, but in fact they were really rich in another way, and that way was happiness. They were so happy, and they were so grateful, and they had this wonderful, wonderful sense of community. And it was actually there that I realised, do you know what, that's what I want to do in my life. I want to work with young people, and I want to work kind of spreading happiness. And I want to do something that helps people strengthen the communities and have this sense of gratitude and community, like these people did. And it was only meant to be a week trip, and I ended up staying there 2 months. And I kept leaving the orphanage, and like anywhere in Southeast Asia, you can actually be on a night bus, you can be back somewhere else in 24 hours. So I kept leaving and travelling, but then ended up back here. And I was really grateful to get involved in a project of building a school and building toilets in a poverty village in Takeo. So coming back to the UK, I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to work with young people, and I started working as a youth worker for NCS The Challenge. Has anybody heard of it? Awesome. So they're one of the biggest youth and community charities in the UK, and there I went straight into a job where I was running summer programs with disadvantaged young people from different backgrounds. They had various different kind of mental and physical challenges too, and it was wonderful. It was absolutely my dream job. And I loved it, and it was so rewarding, but my goodness, it was exhausting. And I went from kind of travelling and living this kind of very quite carefree life, as you do when you're travelling, into managing 7 staff, 60 young people, and all the challenges that came with it. And before, it didn't actually take that long, before the cracks started to form again, I wasn't sleeping, I felt like there was kind of loads of heavy bricks laying on my chest, and it was just that I didn't really know how to cope with the stress, because no one had ever taught me. At school, they teach us all these things, but actually they don't really teach us resilience or how to cope with stress, or, if you feel like there's something heavy on your chest, it doesn't mean that you're losing your mind or you're having a heart attack. It's anxiety because you've maybe taken on too much or you don't really know how to cope very well with this. So with that, the cracks started to form, and thankfully my manager noticed, a wonderful lady called Lindsay Roundturner, and she got me a session with a life coach. And at this point, I'd absolutely never heard of a life coach. I didn't know what one was. But I remember panicking that I've got to take an hour out the day and I've got so much on my to-do list to go and see this woman. But what I didn't realise was actually that hour with her changed my life for the better. And in that hour, she taught me so many amazing things. She taught me that thoughts aren't facts, which was an absolute revelation to me. She taught me the power of just stopping and noticing your breath and the calming influence that would have. And she also taught me the be your own best friend technique, and she taught me to treat myself as I would a really good friend. And I remember coming out of this just 60 minutes with this lady, feeling so much stronger, so much more resilient, and so much better able to deal with the stresses of life. And absolutely nothing had changed. The job hadn't changed, my circumstances hadn't changed, but actually I changed because I felt a bit more resilient to it, and I felt like I'd come out with magical coping powers somehow. And again, I remember thinking, my goodness, why did they not teach us this at school? I can't remember the last time algebra got me out of a really emotionally challenging situation. But actually, I still use these daily practices that Catherine, that life coach, taught me, and I use them daily. And after coming out of that session, I felt a real purpose and a real passion to kind of share this knowledge, and I was doing it with my young people kind of as and whenever I could, running sessions, trying to kind of make training courses, and I wanted to continue seeing Catherine. But unfortunately, my free session was up, and it was then £75 an hour, which I didn't have. So feeling resourceful after my 1 hour session with her, I thought, what other way can I kind of gain this knowledge? And, we're in a day and age where there's so many opportunities and there's so much knowledge everywhere surrounding us at our fingertips. And so I started going on courses, and I started reading lots of books, and I started going to different talks. And for the first time in my life, I found like I'd found my passion. And I felt like I'd found something that I was good at. And I felt really passionate about kind of getting this out and sharing these kind of wonderful tips and techniques with as many people as possible. But actually, it can be quite hard to do things on your own. And so what I thought is, what I actually need is a happiness partner in crime to kind of do this with. And that's when I met this man. And that's when I met Shamash. And I went very much by chance. Very, very much by chance, actually. I went by chance to Vauxhall Community Centre, and it was a birthday party of a charity called Cool It Arts by a lady that I'd met on a course that I'd been on. Very coincidentally made it over there, and I was hovering by the buffet table next to this cake when this man was too. And I met Shamash, and I just adored him instantly, as most people do. And I loved his energy and his enthusiasm, and actually I'd found my happiness partner in crime. And actually, we'd actually both gone for the same carrot stick on the buffet, actually. And it was there, actually, we hit it off. We shared the same passion for, wanting to spread happiness. And we ended up going on a mindfulness retreat that Shamash was running in Morocco a few days later. And in the beautiful surroundings of Morocco, this mindfulness trip completely changed my life. I didn't know anything about mindfulness, really. It was the one course that I hadn't been on after that life coaching session on this binge to try and get knowledge. And actually, there on that mindfulness tree, it really changed my life. And I learned acceptance, and I learned self-compassion, and I learned to be really kind to myself, and I learned forgiveness. And actually, I learned to forgive myself for, not being able to help my mum that day. And I learned to forgive myself for not being able to help my dad. And I realised that I'd held on to this guilt and this sadness for years. And actually, Shamash did this wonderful meditation where you envision holding on to two heavy carrier bags. And one was the future and one was the past. And just for a moment, he was like, just let go of them. And I did. And I felt this sense of happiness and contentment kind of flow through my whole body. And it was such a wonderful and bizarre experience. And I don't know, something really magical happened on that retreat. Not only had I met Shamash, but I'd learned all these wonderful things like acceptance and forgiveness and self-kindness and self-compassion. So coming back to the UK, me and Shamash started seeing each other weekly, if not more. And it was amazing. We had all these wonderful day trips out to parks, and we were doing meditation, and we'd brainstorm, how can we spread happiness? How can we get these wonderful teachings out to more people? And we were on a boat on the Serpentine, and a little pedal boat, and we were listening to Michael Jackson. As Shamash tends to play often in most scenarios. And we were talking and we were thinking, how do we do this? And Shamash was already running courses and I was already teaching young people. And as we were talking back and forth on our pedalo, listening to Michael Jackson, the idea of a centre for happiness started to evolve. And as this centre for happiness started to evolve, the clouds parted and the sun came shining through, and we laughed and we said, I wonder if this is a sign, or is this the gateway to heaven? And we laughed and we thought, you know what, this is it. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to start some kind of centre for happiness. And after that, me and Shamash went our separate ways for a couple of weeks, which we hadn't done since we'd met. And I went to Glastonbury. Has anyone been to Glastonbury here? Yeah? And Shamash went to volunteer at a Dalai Lama event. So 2 quite different trips. But actually, there was one kind of common theme that ran through both of these trips. And actually, at the core of both of those events, there was community, there was love, and there was world peace. So here I am at Glastonbury, and I found it really an inspiring experience, actually. And it was so much more than a music festival, because actually it brought together people from all walks of life to celebrate and have a sense of community and be kind to each other. And I remember feeling really inspired by this. As inspiring as it was, by the final day, I was feeling quite broken. And it was self-inflicted. And I decided to ditch the final day of the music and head to a place called the Healing Fields. And in the Healing Fields, it was a place where you could go and escape the chaos of the festival. And you could drop into wonderful services like mindfulness, like meditation, like yoga, laughter yoga, life coaching. And it was all on a donation basis. And so I did. I lapped it up. I did all of it. And I picked up a Glastonbury Press. That's me reading it there. And it was just filled with good news. And I thought, wow, isn't this refreshing to the normal tabloids that we read? So as I was sat there reading my Glastonbury Press, I pondered, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a place that you could go to escape the chaos of London and drop into different wonderful services like meditation, like yoga, like laughter yoga, and have this sense of community and friendship and kind of top up on your happiness levels. And I was like, okay, that's it. So eagerly, really wanting to speak to Shamash but having no phone battery, I sat there for a moment and thought, actually, for a moment of gratitude that we weren't in a time where if you had exciting news you wanted to share with someone, you had to send it by pigeon or send it by letter. And so when I got back, I met with Shamash and, was so excited to hear all about his Dalai Lama trip, and I'm sure he'd had lots of ideas for inspiration too. And he absolutely had. So whilst at the Dalai Lama event, he met a wonderful lady called Alma, who's here today, all the way from Austria. Woo woo! And Alma and her family ran a museum of nonsense in Austria. So this completely changed, the idea of a museum for me. So, no longer is it kind of these exhibits in glass cases that we're not really supposed to touch. And actually, Alma and her family had made this wonderful community organisation where people went and explored exhibits that were comical and they were funny and they were creative. And they had laughter yoga there. So me and Shamash were literally walking down the street and we turned to each other and we said, that's it. That's how we're going to do it. Let's start a museum of happiness. So we did. So we actually, we thought, we better test it. It was just kind of a load of ideas scribbled down on paper. And so we tested it. And we did 3 events where we tested what we'd want to have in there and we shared it with people. And that's actually where we met Chi. And she's at the top there in the yellow skirt. And there's a few people here today that have played really integral parts in the Museum of Happiness, actually, that we met in these wonderful events. And actually what we found happen was it had this kind of lovely energy of its own, and actually the people and the help we needed just seemed to come together, and they seemed to come to us. And actually, before we knew it, we had this lovely following, and we had this wonderful community of friendship and love, and it grew and grew and grew. And we thought it's time, you know, to do a bigger pop-up, which was one of Chi's ideas. We, after these events, we were really happy to actually get involved, and we got nominated for the Happy List, which was a take on the Rich List, which I thought is good, actually, that they're celebrating happiness as opposed to just wealth. And we got invited into Sky to tell our story. And I was thinking, wonderful that Sky want to show news like this about these wonderful things that are happening, and wonderful that the independent paper wants to have a happy list and not just a rich list. So we did a pop-up, and we thought a few hundred people might come, and 7,000 people came. And it was the best weekend of my life. It was tiring, but it was so wonderful. And again, it just had this wonderful energy that seemed to grow and grow and grow. We met more people, and so many inspiring stories came off the back of this day, and amazing people. After this event, we knew we had to find the Museum of Happiness a permanent home. And it made me really sad to kind of pack down the pop-up and put it all in storage. And I was like, the Museum of Happiness doesn't want to be in storage, collecting cobwebs. It needs to be out in all its glory, spreading happiness. And so it gives me great pleasure to announce that the Museum of Happiness does have its first home, and it's at London's first Happy Cafe, the Canvas. And woo! Which is an absolute match made in heaven. And this is us here celebrating International Day of Happiness. And it makes me really, really happy to announce today that we've actually launched our event programme today. So anyone can come in and drop along to services like meditation, like mindfulness, like yoga, like laughter yoga, just as I did that day at Glastonbury. And, you know, whether you're feeling a bit broken or not, come in and top up your happiness levels. Thank you. You can skip it. Yeah, so we have been very, very fortunate to have an amazing man that has been with us through the start, James Light, who's volunteered with us, who just happens to be an incredible, talented filmmaker, and he's captured the magic and the journey the whole way through. So I'd just love to share this video with you. Thank you.
A Museum of Happiness has opened in the capital. Its aim? To boost the emotional health and well-being of Londoners. Based in Shoreditch, it's offering a range of activities from colouring in therapy to relaxation.
It's happiness, isn't it? Why wouldn't anyone want to be more happy? It's not like you have to give anything up, just a little bit of time.
I did laughter yoga, which was great fun. It was just really funny.
The non-for-profit museum will host exhibits and events which they hope will improve people's well-being.
So we wanted to create a platform where people can come together, explore the science and art of happiness, but kind of make positive connections with people, learn, explore, have fun, laugh together.
There's museums about art, there's millions of museums about science, but happiness is so important, there should be a space to explore it.
The museum is based in the Canvas Cafe, London's first Happy Cafe.
We were already offering free programmes in emotional health, so it's an absolute perfect fit that the Museum of Happiness comes here on site and makes us a happiness hub here in Shoreditch.
We're trying to sort of help with the mental health issues that a lot of people suffer with today, like depression and anxiety, especially within young and old people. And it's about offering our services to them through the workshop leaders that help volunteer here.
Often think that happiness is something that you get once you've got something, but it's very much a decision. Like if I want to be happy right now, I can be.
Everyone wants happiness in their lives, and when you start to understand how much you have and how much capacity you've got for happiness, I think that's a really important thing, and how much you open yourself up to it.
Happiness is the only reason for living, really. If you want to have a good life, you need to be happy.
No matter what we choose, if that doesn't result in happiness, what's the point?
I
think we need a place to just sort of let go a little bit and not worry about what we're doing on day-to-day lives. An event like this is great to just get people to sort of do something different and let go of their inhibitions and do the silent disco or do something creative. I don't think we create enough anymore. We're all a bit scared of what we're going to produce. So I think a day like this is just a real day to meet new people and to let go.
I think together we can actually make a massive difference. And this was just an idea a year ago, and now we've got thousands of people coming in, leaving feeling happier than they came in, and some of them I'm sure it's made a massive positive difference and may do for a long time ahead.
Everybody say happiness! Happiness!
Thank you, James Light, and thank you everyone for listening. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to kind of end on. Doing this talk, which is the first time I've ever done this talk actually, made me really reflect on a few things, and one was actually being really grateful for our challenges because they can become our blessings. The second one was when you don't know the answers, don't worry, just default to love and be really kind to yourself. And the third one was, yeah, be the change you want to see in the world, because actually every little really does help. Thank you.